If people can wrap up their conversations, we're going to start the featured presentations. For those who don't know, I'm Loren Leed. I'm currently the acting president of this distinguished group. And I'm going to be doing a short presentation on a photo editing program called Luminar 2018. It's a program that I think is very promising. Works for people who are novice as well as professionals. And it's got a unique approach. I've never seen a program work exactly the way this one does. So thought I would talk about how to get the program first, because if you're interested, the best way to do this is to go directly to the Skylum website. And if you do that, you will be able to get the best deal. It will be the full version of the program that will work as a plugin inside of Apple's photo app, as well as Lightroom and Photoshop. And you will also get several video tutorials on learning the program that would come in handy. If you download it from the App Store, you will get a version that's standalone only with no tutorials. And that is because Apple does not allow plugins on their applications. Once you've downloaded it, you need to obviously install it. And the way you turn on extensions in Apple, I'm going to show you real quick. You go to System Preferences, and there's actually an extensions pane here that has any plugins that you may have accessed or installed. And you go to the Photo tab, and because you've installed Luminar, it will show up there, and you'll be able to click the checkbox. So meanwhile, back over here at my keynote, once you've done that, you can go to the Photos app, and there is going to be an icon for extensions. And you will find that either on the side panel in Photos or on the top button bar on the upper right-hand side, depending on which version of the Photos app that you have.
When you open up the program, where is that Photos that you just mentioned?
When you open up the photo?
Open up Luminar 2018. You said go to Photos. Where is that Photos located?
The Photos I'm talking about is Apple's Photos app. And I also will be talking about using Luminar as a standalone program, but I think as a starting point, if people are already using Photos, this is a great way to extend the power of editing. So that's going to be the main focus for the first part of our presentation. So we're going to go over to Photos. And I'm going to pick a photo that is in an album that I wanted to work on, and go over into edit mode, which you can get to edit from the pull-down menu for images, or you can just do a Command J to go in and out of editing mode. And right here at the bottom is the extensions thing, and I'm just going to access Luminar on the extensions, and it will open up Luminar as a plugin. So the thing that got me was that Photos is a program that it gives you a fair amount of control. You can use the controls for contrast, and it has levels, it has curves, it has a lot of things that people never touch. It does have a one-touch button to improve the image, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, you're stuck. There are no controls for it, so you're ending up having to click on sliders and play around with it. Well, to bypass that for beginners, what Luminar has done is that it has created a set of presets that are very intelligent. Right up here at the top, you can turn on the presets, and they have a whole series of them for different situations. The basic ones, city scenes, outdoor, portraits, travel, dramatic, and also you can have presets that you save, that you have customized. And I'm going to just go ahead and start out with outdoor. And this is going to be an example of, here is a totally okay sunset picture taken with the iPhone. And then there's nothing particularly wrong, but it doesn't look like a picture postcard. It doesn't really pop. And so I'm going to use the Auto Smart Enhancer, which is a really great starting point. And just with that one click, it really brings the image to life. And it did that by applying all of these filters here that are on the side, and you can tell that they have been dragged to different positions. You get all of these controls, and it's using an artificial intelligence analyzation of the image and then enhancing it. If you don't like the way it works, there's a little slider here, and you can say, well, I like it, but that's a little bit too much. Well, you can just cut down the effect. Or you can go over and you can cut down on the color saturation a little bit. You can fine tune it, or you can make it higher. You can fine tune even after you've done it with one touch. So it's a wonderful way to do what-if scenarios. This is for a bright day. It turned the sunset into something that looks more like an afternoon. Daydreams. This is one for fixing dark pictures. They have several that basically add soft focus effect, which is something that is not easy to add to pictures without making them look horrible. And these are all things that you can play around with and then learn from them. You can use this actually as an educational tool. If you really like the way these presets are working, well, how does it do it? You can just go in and look at the filters and see how the settings affect the images, so you can actually learn the professional tools that are over here on the side and how they work. So once you have the image the way you want it, at the top you just click Save Changes, and it brings you back to the Photos app. And I'm going to go back over here, out of edit mode, and back to my album. I think it's still saving. Now here's an image that was also done with the iPhone as a panorama. And once again, you know, it's an okay picture, but it isn't really as dramatic as it felt at the time. And so as a starting point, once again, I would try the Auto Smart Enhancer. And suddenly, if you've ever been to Arches or Bryce Canyon, any of the canyon country areas, that red soil really does pop like that. And it did a great job. However, on this particular day, when I was standing up there, it was one of those times in the desert type areas where you're getting a weather change, and the temperature dropped 20 degrees. The wind was whipping my pants. It was feeling like it was going to rain. I had hiked up in Birkenstocks and having a t-shirt, you know, just looking at this beautiful country. I get to the top and suddenly there's this weather change. So in actuality, it really, at the time, looked more ominous like that. So you have the ability to match the drama to create the emotional mood. And you know, playing around with these different filters, you can see the potential, things that you would probably never get to by sliding on all the filters in any other photography program. smart presets are wonderful for that. Now you'll notice too, every time that you finish an image and you save it, you lose 10 or 15 seconds or so as it's processing and saving it. If you were wanting to do 100 images, that may be a problem, but for most purposes, you save so much time in the fact that it didn't take you as long to do the edit that waiting 10 or 15 seconds to save the image is well worth it. Yes?
Does it keep the original?
What Photos does, at any time in Photos, you can revert to the original. So for instance here, I can go back.
Upper right-hand corner over.
Oh, actually, it is right here, isn't it?
There's revert to original.
Revert to original, right up here on the top.
It doesn't say both copies.
If you want, you can, if you're going to want to keep a original, and I'm actually going to cover that later, when you're working it as a standalone application, you can save the entire history of every single step that you took to get there. And when you open it back up, you can actually, it's like a recipe. And I don't know if anyone who's ever worked in Photoshop and built a complicated image and like at 2 o'clock in the morning when you were inspired and then try to figure out the next day what you actually did, because Photoshop's history is gone as soon as you close the file. And this is the first program that saves the entire history with the file. So that's a sneak preview of something that's
In the Photos app,
coming.
if you made a nice creation and then thought, I'd like to have the original side by side, you can duplicate the photo and then revert to original on one of the copies.
So here's another landscape.
It's a little dark.
Yes, this one is a very dramatic backlit shot. And I'm going to start it out again with a smart enhancer. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see a little bit more. This is probably good right here. So this is an example here of the filters. This is Daydream. You can make it look a bit more dramatic there. I'm going to go back to fit the screen here. Now, even with this, it's still not holding. You can see more detail there, but this is an example of, okay, I've got the filter, it's made it better, but I really want more detail in the cliff there. So I'm going to slide up the shadow and the blacks a little bit. Now look at that. You suddenly have an image that looked, that is more what I saw when I was taking the picture of Anne. So that is an example of using a preset that's close to what you want and then making a simple edit just to push it that last part. And down at the bottom here, there's a button to save filter preset. And if I decide that there were a lot of images that day that I took that were backlit and would need that, I can save this as backlit. And it is now going to show up here in my user presets. You can always do before and after. This little eye thing, as you click down on it, it shows you the original image. This is a divider that you can drag back and forth and show the difference. And this is also very handy while you are working on fine-tuning, because you can compare before and after. So that again is also quite handy. So I'm just going to cancel that so we don't have to wait for it to save.
So if you click on it again, the bar would disappear? The bar that was in
Oh, that bar, I think, is only when you're in the editing mode as a preview of the changes. When you go and save, then the bar
Yeah.
disappears.
Yeah, that is a toggle. So it turns on, you can drag the slider and then you click to turn it off. You'd have to do a screenshot to actually get a picture of that divider.
Okay.
Okay, let's go back to my keynote, see what I'm supposed to be talking about next. Now this is going to be a quick one here. Again, this is a so-so picture of little birds. And I played around with this one, just looking at the different filters. Yes. There's another a more dramatic way, and it's on the street setting. And you can actually use the center of attention, because the birds is kind of, where your attention is drawn. And in one click, it adjusted the color and it added a vignette automatically. And one of the nice things about the vignette is that, unlike the vignette in photos, you can actually change the center of where that is occurring, where the center of the vignette is, which can completely change the emphasis. So that's another nice feature. So now I'm going to look at what it can do to improve portraits. And this was a nice picture taken by a friend of ours at our wedding. We just had our 4th anniversary. Yes.
They look like they've already been color enhanced.
Yes, absolutely. So for that, the category would be portrait. And enhanced portrait is not bad, but as we go in, and Anne's going to hate me for this. It is not particularly flattering because we have real faces. And so what I found to be wonderful is this is the smooth portrait setting. And that basically, back in the day, you had to pay big bucks to have an airbrush artist go in and smooth out everything. And this filter basically emulates that wonderful smoothing effect. And just to show you the difference, look at that. And that's on a screen.
I don't think that'd work when you get to my age.
No comment. Okay, and then I've got one more, I think, before we go to the standalone version. Yes. Now this is also an iPhone photo, and it was taken with the high dynamic range setting. And even with that, the interior is still underlit. And this happened to be taken a couple years ago with that terribly snowy winter that we had. So I'm going to start out with portrait, which is where you might think would be a good starting point because there's a person there. But no, not really, because this is actually natural light. And I found that the outdoor setting did much more to improve the overall exposure. So starting out with the Auto Smart Enhancer again. So suddenly everything came far more to life. But the one that I have fallen in love with is Misty Land. Now suddenly, this reads as the warmth of a home with the cold, icy snow outside. It has a far stronger emotional take.
I want to see how black and white looks.
Sure, and it has a lot of really good black and white settings.
Now, you're not stuck with just the one black and white setting. Like here, it looks like you may like most of it, but the highlights have gotten blown out, and so you can't see the outside. And there may be a slider that says highlights.
Yep, right here, here's your highlight slider. So you can bring those back. And the whites as well. And I have not really worked with the black and white conversions. I'm sure that there's several other areas that we could do on that, but we're on a fixed time schedule here. So Luminar, working as a standalone editor. So we can now, here is Luminar, open image. And just as a frame of reference, this is a 2013 MacBook Pro with 8 gigs of RAM. It is running a SSD drive, but it's only 250 gigabytes. So it's snappier on a desktop machine if you have a faster machine, but this has been totally fine. And I'm running 3 programs and a screen recorder simultaneously while it's doing the image processing. So I'm going to show you some of the examples of how you can do more. I mean, the thing that you may notice, and you probably can't see it, but you'll take my word for it, is that every time you do a preset, everything over here on the workspace completely changes, okay? So say you had, I really like this soft and airy, but I want to go through here and I want to, bring down the saturation just a little bit. And what else do we got down here? The detail enhancer, I want to turn that up because I lost a little bit of detail when it went soft focus. Okay.
Can you put the bar thing up so you can see the before and after?
Yeah, let's do that again.
Can you move that bar to the right or left?
Yes, you can, if you can hit it. I'm not used to using a trackpad, so this is kind of like me working left-handed. See there, up here on the top, it's a little screen with an orange line down the middle of it, and that turns it on, and it also turns it off. And the eyeball next to that basically gives you a one touch before, after, before, after. So anyway, I made some custom settings on here, and I think, well, wait a minute, what about vivid? Oh, I like that, but it totally switched out all of the filters that I had just set. So you can't, in regular mode, in plug-in mode, you can't combine any of these smart filters because they totally replace the workspace unless you create a layer. So we have one layer now with this setting on here, and I click on the little plus sign in the layers, and I want to add an adjustment layer. So now I can do add a filter to the adjustment layer, and this is a list of filters, and notice that they have a description of what it actually does. And I'm going to add a vignette. And you can do a white vignette or a dark one. And you can change the roundness or have it be more of a square gradient. You can feather it more. And there's one called inner light that makes the inside have more of a glow. And as I said before, you can change the center of the gradient. And try that the other way. So that kind of gave more depth to the foreground. So you can also make a new image layer. This is one that it's like, oh my God, what good would that be? But you can do what is called layer blends. And right now it's just normal, and it has an opacity of 100%, so you can't see anything below that. But you can intermix it with different algorithms of lightening and darkening, mixing the layers between it. And quite often, if you just use a hue or color, you can create these beautiful fantasy type effects, because it's just pulling some of the color information and mixing it with the pixels below that. And I think this is just beautiful. I just put two random images together and played around with the blend of how the pixels are being mixed, and I created something that looks like, you know, an illustration. Yeah, Mousetrack's cover. So that is the advantage of layers, and when you work like this, you have your entire history of everything that you worked on. And when you save it, the important thing here is to use Save As, and make sure that you have Save Original Resources and Save History. If you don't have Save History checked, when you open it up, that history is gone. So this is going to save the entire history. You can open this up later, and how the heck did I do that? You can just look down the history. Yes. I would call this Fantasy House or something. And you can tell the extension is LMNR, Luminar. That's the Luminar format, which won't open in anything else. So I've saved as. And there's up here, there's your standard share image icon. You can share it to mail and, you know, all the usual places, just like you would with any other Mac application. And then let's go back to the final points, closing thoughts. Luminar is a plugin. It works great with photos. You know, you can use it with a program that you already have photos and albums in that you've organized, and extend the power of your editing. As a standalone editor, it gives you the ability to build more complicated images as you grow creatively. History states are awesome. And coming soon, Luminar is going to have an organizer section, so it will actually be possible to use the standalone version and do your photo sorting and tagging in your albums, so you won't even have to be going back and forth. And that is supposed to come out later this year. The special offer is available at the Skylum website. $69. You get 4 tutorials, and you get the version that's a plugin. That's it. Thank you.
Everyone should have gotten an email from Janet with a link to the Dropbox where you can download the latest issue of Mousetracks, where there's an article that Loren wrote that goes into a little bit more detail and where to download this program.
Yes, it's true.